Harrison's sleek, black sedan had just pulled into the driveway when his driver slammed the brakes, the car lurching forward as a figure suddenly threw herself into their path like a desperate gust of wind. "What the hell?" Harrison caught himself mid-sentence, his eyes shifting from his startled driver to the crumpled form now sprawled in front of their headlights, and he quickly stepped out into the storm. "Please don't hit me. I'm already hurt." Her voice cut through the torrential rain and the dim glow of the streetlights, every word trembling with terror, shaking with panic that seemed to come from somewhere much deeper than this moment. He moved closer, gesturing to show her she was safe, but all he could see was this small, fragile girl mumbling her pleas like someone lost in delirium, her words spilling out in a desperate stream of fear. "Easy there, easy," he said softly, reaching out to touch her shoulder gently, his voice meant to calm and reassure. And when their eyes finally met in that rain-soaked darkness, it felt like the beginning of many stories about to unfold about this strange girl standing before him. "Daddy," Lily's voice called from the car, cutting through the heavy silence like a knife. "What's taking so long?" "Is she okay, Daddy?" The woman's clothes were soaked through, clinging to her thin frame like a second skin that revealed just how little protection she had against the world. Harrison could see the exhaustion in every line of her body, the way she held herself as if expecting another blow to fall at any moment. Her hair, matted and dark with rain, framed a face that might have been pretty once, before whatever had happened to put that haunted look in her eyes. "I'm Harrison Blackwood," he said, keeping his voice low and steady, the same tone he used when Lily woke up from nightmares. "This is my home. You're safe here." But even as he said the words, he could see she didn't believe them, couldn't believe them, and he wondered what kind of hell someone had to live through to make safety seem like another word for trap. The woman tried to stand, her legs shaking so badly that Harrison instinctively reached out to steady her, but she flinched away from his touch like he'd threatened to strike her. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rain. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I was just running and I saw the lights and I thought—" She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself in a gesture that was both defensive and heartbreakingly vulnerable. Harrison felt something tighten in his chest as he watched her struggle with words that seemed to cost her everything to speak. "You don't need to apologize," he said. "You haven't done anything wrong." From the warmth of the car, Lily's small face was pressed against the window, her breath fogging the glass as she watched this strange scene unfold. At 8 years old, she had already learned to read the moods and emotions of the adults around her, with an accuracy that sometimes startled Harrison. Her mother's illness had taught her that adults weren't always as strong as they pretended to be, and now she could see that this woman, standing in their driveway, needed help in a way that had nothing to do with the rain. "Daddy!" she called again, rolling down the window despite the storm. She's scared. Why is she so scared? Harrison glanced back at his daughter, then at the woman who was now looking at Lily with something that might have been wonder. It was the first time since she'd appeared that the terror in her eyes had been replaced by anything else, and Harrison realized that perhaps his 8-year-old daughter had just accomplished something he couldn't. "What's your name?" he asked gently. And when the woman's gaze returned to his, he saw her struggling with an answer that should have been simple. "Maya," she said finally, as if she wasn't entirely sure it was true. "My name is Maya." The way she said it made Harrison think it might not be the name she was born with, but it was the name she was choosing now. In this moment, standing in his driveway like someone who had just discovered she was still alive. The rain was beginning to ease, but Maya was shivering so violently that Harrison knew she needed to get inside before she collapsed entirely. "Maya," he said, testing the name and finding it fit her somehow. "Would you like to come inside? Get warm, get dry?" But even as he offered, he could see the panic flicker across her features again, the way her eyes darted toward the street as if expecting someone to emerge from the shadows. "I can't," she said. "I can't go inside. I can't." She was backing away again, and Harrison realized with a sinking feeling that his offer of shelter sounded too much like a cage to someone who had clearly been trapped before. "Okay," he said quickly, holding up his hands in a gesture of surrender. "We don't have to go inside. But maybe you could sit on the porch, just to get out of the rain." He was negotiating with her fear, he realized, the same way he sometimes had to negotiate with Lily when she was afraid of the dark. "I'll bring you some tea. Some dry clothes. Whatever you need." Maya looked at him for a long moment, and Harrison found himself holding his breath, waiting to see if she would run again, or if she might take this first small step toward trusting that not everyone in the world meant her harm. "Just the porch?" she asked, and her voice was so small it nearly broke his heart. When Maya finally nodded, Harrison felt like he'd won something precious and fragile. He sent his driver home with instructions to pick him up in the morning, then helped Maya up the steps to his covered porch, where she settled into a corner like a wild animal that had agreed to accept shelter but wasn't ready to fully trust it yet. Lily had climbed out of the car despite the rain, her small feet splashing through puddles as she approached with the fearless curiosity that only children possessed. "Are you hurt?" she asked Maya directly, her young voice cutting straight to the heart of things the way children's voices often did. "Daddy can help. He helped me when I was scared after Mommy went to heaven." The mention of death made Maya's head snap up, and Harrison saw her really look at Lily for the first time, taking in the sight of this small girl with her father's dark hair and her mother's gentle eyes. "Your mommy went to heaven?" Maya asked softly, and Lily nodded with the matter-of-fact acceptance of a child who had learned, too young, that sometimes the people you love don't get to stay. "She was sick," Lily explained, "but Daddy says she's watching over us now. Maybe your mummy is watching over you too." It was such an innocent comment, but Harrison saw the way it hit Maya like a physical blow, saw her face crumble for just a moment before she pulled herself back together with visible effort. "I don't know where my mother is," Maya whispered, and there was something in the way she said it that made Harrison think this was about more than just physical distance. "I don't know where anyone is anymore." She was crying now, silently, tears mixing with the rainwater on her face, and Harrison felt an overwhelming urge to reach out and comfort her. But he held himself back, remembering how she'd flinched from his touch earlier, understanding that she needed to feel safe before she could accept kindness. "Well, you're here now," Lily said with 8-year-old logic, "and Daddy always says here is a good place to start." Over the next hour, as Harrison brought blankets and hot soup and dry clothes that belonged to their part-time housekeeper, Maya began to thaw in ways that had nothing to do with the temperature. She ate carefully, as if she wasn't sure the food wouldn't be taken away, and she answered Lily's questions with a patience that surprised Harrison. Yes, she was very tired. No, she didn't have anywhere else to go tonight. Yes, she thought Lily was very smart and very kind, but when Lily asked why she had been so scared, Maya's face shut down again, and Harrison quickly intervened to distract his daughter with talk of bedtime and school tomorrow. "I should go," Maya said after Lily had reluctantly headed inside to get ready for bed. "I've imposed enough." But when she tried to stand, Harrison could see that exhaustion was winning the battle against fear, that her body was finally demanding rest whether her mind trusted it or not. "Where will you go?" he asked gently, and when she couldn't answer, he knew she had nowhere. "The guest house," he said, gesturing toward a small building at the back of his property. "It's separate from the main house, has its own entrance, its own kitchen. You'd be completely independent." He could see her considering it, weighing her desperate need for shelter against her terror of being trapped again. "Just for tonight," she said finally, and Harrison nodded, understanding that this was as much commitment as she could make right now. As he walked her to the guest house, Maya wrapped the dry clothes he'd given her around herself like armor, and he noticed for the first time that beneath the fear and exhaustion, there was something else in her bearing. A kind of dignity that suggested she hadn't always been running, hadn't always been afraid. "Thank you," she said when they reached the door, and the words came out like they cost her something to say. "I haven't. It's been a long time since someone was kind to me." Harrison wanted to ask her what had happened, wanted to know who had hurt her and how long she'd been running, but he could see that she was barely holding herself together as it was. "Get some rest," he said instead. "Tomorrow is another day." But as he walked back to the main house, he found himself looking over his shoulder, half expecting to find that she had disappeared again into the night. The porch light cast long shadows across his yard, and he realized that Maya's arrival had stirred something in him that he hadn't felt since his wife died. Not romantic attraction, exactly, but a sense of purpose, a feeling that maybe he was meant to help this broken woman find her way back to herself. That night, Harrison lay awake listening to the rain taper off into silence, thinking about the way Maya had looked at Lily, the careful way she had eaten his food, the terror in her voice when she'd begged him not to hit her. He thought about his own daughter, sleeping peacefully down the hall, and tried to imagine what kind of world would make a woman so afraid of a simple offer of help. Somewhere in his guest house, Maya was probably lying awake too, listening to the same silence and wondering if she was safe, or if this was just another trap waiting to spring closed around her. When morning came, Harrison woke earlier than usual, drawn to his kitchen window by a need to check if Maya was still there. What he saw surprised him. She was in his garden, kneeling among the flower beds with dirt under her fingernails, carefully tending to plants that had been neglected since his housekeeper had quit the month before. She moved with practiced efficiency, deadheading roses and pulling weeds with the focused intensity of someone who found peace in the rhythm of simple work. There was something different about her in the morning light, something that suggested that beneath the fear and exhaustion, there was a woman who knew how to take care of things, who found strength in nurturing growth. "She's working in your garden," Lily observed, appearing at Harrison's side with the quiet footsteps she'd perfected over years of early morning wandering. "Maybe she likes flowers." It was such a simple observation, but it made Harrison realize that he knew almost nothing about Maya except that she was afraid and alone and had nowhere else to go. "Maybe she does," he agreed, watching as Maya sat back on her heels to examine her work, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been the night before. "Maybe we should go say good morning." When Maya looked up to find Harrison and Lily approaching, that shuttered look didn't cross her face the way it had the night before. Instead, she seemed almost embarrassed to be caught working in his garden without permission. "I'm sorry," she said, scrambling to her feet and brushing dirt from her hands. "I couldn't sleep, and I saw that your roses needed attention, and I just—" She trailed off, looking down at her dirt-stained fingers as if they had betrayed her somehow. "I used to have a garden," she added quietly. And it was the first piece of her past she had voluntarily shared. "They look beautiful," Harrison said, and he meant it. In just a few hours, Maya had transformed his neglected flower beds into something that looked loved again. "You have a gift." The compliment made her flush, and Harrison realized it had probably been a long time since anyone had praised her for anything. "I could pay you," he said impulsively, "if you wanted to stay and take care of the garden. And maybe help with some other things around the house. Lily's been asking for someone to teach her to cook." He was improvising, making up reasons to keep her here, but as soon as he said it, he realized how much sense it made. Maya stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. "You want to hire me?" she asked, and there was something like wonder in her voice. "Even though you don't know anything about me? Even though She gestured helplessly at herself, at her borrowed clothes and her tangled hair and whatever story was written in the lines of exhaustion around her eyes. "I know you're good with plants," Harrison said. "I know you're kind to my daughter. I know you work hard." He paused, studying her face. "And I know you need a place to be safe while you figure out what comes next." The offer hung in the air between them, and Harrison could see Maya wrestling with it, wanting to say yes but afraid of what acceptance might cost her. "What if he finds me?" she asked, and it was the first time she had acknowledged that there was a specific he she was running from. "What if I bring trouble to your house?" The question revealed so much more than she probably meant it to, painting a picture of someone who had learned to see herself as dangerous to the people who cared about her. "Then we'll deal with it," Harrison said simply. "Together." It took 3 more days of negotiation, of Maya working in the garden each morning and retreating to the guest house each evening, before she finally agreed to stay on as his housekeeper and gardener. Even then, it was Lily who sealed the deal, appearing at Maya's elbow with a hand-drawn contract that promised fair wages and all the cookies you can eat, in exchange for making Daddy smile more and teaching me to make spaghetti. Maya had laughed when she read it, the first real laugh Harrison had heard from her, and he knew in that moment that his daughter had accomplished something he couldn't have managed on his own. The routine they developed over the following weeks was careful and respectful, built around Maya's need for space and Harrison's growing understanding of what she could and couldn't handle. She worked in the garden early in the mornings when the world was quiet, cleaned the house while Harrison was at the office and Lily was at school, and cooked dinner with a skill that suggested she had once taken pride in feeding people she cared about. In the evenings, she retreated to the guest house, but sometimes she could be convinced to stay for dinner, especially when Lily begged her to tell stories about the different flowers in the garden. It was during one of these dinners that Maya let slip another piece of her past. Lily had asked why she knew so much about roses, and Maya had answered without thinking. "My grandmother taught me," she said. "She said roses were like people. They needed good soil and plenty of water, and someone to believe they were worth the trouble of growing." It was only after she'd said it that Harrison saw her realize how much she had revealed, saw her eyes widen as if she'd spoken secrets she hadn't meant to share. "She sounds like she was a wise woman," he said gently, and Maya nodded, her eyes distant with memory. She was the only one who ever. Maya started, then stopped, shaking her head. It doesn't matter now. She's gone. But Harrison could see that it did matter, that whoever Maya's grandmother had been, she had been important enough to shape the way Maya saw the world, to teach her that growing things was an act of faith and love. I bet she'd be proud of what you've done with the garden, Lily said with 8-year-old confidence. I bet she'd be proud of you. The words hit Maya like a physical blow, and Harrison watched her excuse herself from the table with tears in her eyes. Later that night, Harrison found Maya sitting on the guest house steps, staring up at the stars with an expression he couldn't read. Mind if I join you? He asked, and when she nodded, he settled beside her with careful attention to maintaining enough distance that she wouldn't feel crowded. Lily didn't mean to upset you, he said after a moment of comfortable silence. She has a talent for saying exactly what people need to hear, even when they don't want to hear it. Maya smiled at that, a small, sad smile that suggested she was thinking about more than just his daughter's words. She reminds me of someone I used to know, Maya said quietly. Someone who used to believe the best of everyone. There was a story there, Harrison realized. Probably a sad one, but he didn't push. Lily gets that from her mother, he said instead. Sarah always said there was good in everyone, even when evidence suggested otherwise. It was his own piece of the past, offered in exchange for hers, and he saw Maya turn to look at him with something like surprise. You don't talk about her much, Maya observed. Your wife. It's hard, Harrison admitted. She's been gone 3 years, but sometimes it still feels like she just stepped out for groceries. He was quiet for a moment, remembering. She would have liked you, he said finally. She always brought home strays. People who needed a second chance, a safe place to land. Maya made a sound that might have been laughter, or might have been something else entirely. Is that what I am? She asked. A stray? There was no offense in the question, just curiosity, as if she was trying to understand her place in his world. You're Maya, Harrison said simply. You're the person who makes my daughter laugh and brings my garden back to life and cooks the best lasagna I've ever tasted. It was the truth, but more than that, it was an acknowledgement that she had become important to them, that her presence had filled spaces in their lives they hadn't even realized were empty. You're part of our family now, if you want to be. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and promise, and Harrison held his breath, waiting to see how she would respond. When Maya started crying, Harrison's first instinct was to reach out and comfort her, but he held himself still, understanding that these were complicated tears that meant more than simple sadness. I haven't been part of a family in so long, she whispered. I forgot what it felt like to belong somewhere. The admission was raw and honest, and Harrison felt something shift in his chest, a protective instinct that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with the way she had quietly become essential to the rhythm of their daily lives. You belong here, he said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. The conversation marked a turning point in their relationship, a subtle shift from employer and employee to something more complex and meaningful. Maya began staying for dinner more often, began offering opinions about Lily's homework and Harrison's work decisions, began to exist in their shared spaces with less wariness and more genuine comfort. She was still careful, still watchful, still prone to moments of inexplicable fear. But she was also beginning to heal in ways that were visible to anyone who cared to look. It was Harrison who noticed when Maya started sleeping through the night, when she stopped jumping at unexpected sounds, when she began humming while she worked in the garden. It was Lily who pointed out that Maya was putting on weight, that her face was fuller and her eyes brighter than they had been when she first appeared in their driveway. And it was Maya herself who began asking questions about their lives, showing interest in Harrison's business and Lily's school friends and the rhythms of their ordinary, peaceful existence. But peace, Harrison was learning, was a fragile thing, easily shattered by the intrusion of the past. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday morning in October, when Maya appeared at breakfast, pale and shaking, clutching a newspaper with white-knuckled hands. "He found me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He knows where I am." Harrison took the paper from her trembling fingers and found himself staring at a missing person advertisement featuring Maya's photograph. But the name beneath the picture wasn't Maya. It was Rebecca, and the man offering a reward for her safe return described himself as her loving husband, desperate to bring his wife home. The photograph was old, maybe 2 or 3 years, and it showed a woman who looked like Maya but wasn't quite Maya, someone who had Maya's features but none of her hard-earned wariness. This woman in the picture looked soft and trusting, dressed in expensive clothes, with a smile that suggested she had never had reason to fear the person taking her photograph. "Rebecca," Harrison said quietly, testing the name and finding it didn't fit the woman he knew the way Maya did. "That's who you used to be." It wasn't a question, and Maya nodded miserably, her whole body radiating the kind of terror that came from being hunted by someone who knew exactly how to hurt you. "I ran away 6 months ago," Maya said, the words coming out in a rush as if she'd been holding them back for so long they had become poisonous. "I took nothing but the clothes on my back and what little money I could hide, and I ran." She was crying now, but they were angry tears, tears that spoke of frustration and rage rather than simple sadness. "He's telling people I'm sick, that I need medication, that I don't know what's best for myself." The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut, and Harrison felt something cold settle in the pit of his stomach as he began to understand the scope of what Maya had been running from. "What did he do to you?" Harrison asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Maya looked at him for a long moment, and he could see her weighing how much truth she was willing to trust him with. "He never hit me where anyone could see," she said finally. "He was too smart for that, too important. He knew exactly how to hurt me without leaving evidence, exactly what to say to make me believe it was my fault, exactly how to convince everyone around us that I was the problem." She was shaking now, but her voice was steady, as if saying these things out loud was giving her strength rather than taking it away. The picture Maya painted of her marriage was like a master class in psychological torture, a careful campaign of isolation and control that had been so gradual and so expertly executed that she hadn't even realized it was happening until she was completely trapped. Her husband was Dr. Richard Brennan, a respected psychiatrist with a thriving practice and a reputation for helping other people heal from trauma. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. "He had everyone convinced that I was unstable," Maya continued. "That I was paranoid, delusional, a danger to myself and others. By the time I understood what he was doing to me, there was no one left who would believe me." Harrison found himself thinking about the woman who had appeared in his driveway 6 months ago, terrified and broken, but somehow still fighting, still trying to save herself. How did you get away? He asked, and Maya's smile was bitter and proud at the same time. I planned for 2 years, she said. I pretended to get better, pretended to accept the medication that made me fuzzy and compliant, pretended to believe his version of reality. I saved money in tiny amounts, created a false identity, researched places where someone could disappear. She had been strategic about her escape in ways that spoke to both her intelligence and her desperation. The false identity explained why she had hesitated when Harrison asked her name that first night, why she had chosen Maya with such deliberation. It was a name that belonged to no one, a fresh start built on the carefully constructed fiction that Rebecca Brennan had died, and Maya had been born in her place. But now he's found me, Maya said, her voice cracking with the weight of defeat. And he'll never stop looking. He can't let me go because I know what he really is, and if anyone believed me, it would destroy everything he's built. Harrison was quiet for a long moment, processing everything Maya had told him, and trying to figure out how to respond to a situation that was so far outside his experience. What do you want to do? He asked finally, and the question surprised them both. Maya had clearly expected him to tell her she had to leave, had to run again, had to disappear from their lives to keep them safe. Instead, he was asking her what she wanted, as if her desires mattered more than the danger she might bring to his door. I want to stay, Maya said, the words coming out in a rush. I want to keep working in your garden and teaching Lily to cook and being part of your family. Her voice broke on the last word, and Harrison could see how much it cost her to admit how much their makeshift family meant to her. But I can't ask you to risk Lily's safety for me. I can't be responsible for bringing him into your lives. She was already pulling away from them, he realized, already preparing to run again, to sacrifice her own happiness to protect theirs. What if you didn't have to choose? Harrison said quietly. What if there was another way? He was thinking fast, his business mind automatically searching for solutions to what seemed like an impossible problem. What if we could make sure he never hurt you again? What if we could make sure you never had to run again? Maya looked at him as if he had offered her the moon, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. He's powerful, she said. He has money and connections and everyone believes him. What could we possibly do against someone like that? Harrison smiled, and it was not a particularly pleasant expression. Rebecca, I'm a billionaire with my own connections and resources, and more importantly, I believe you. He reached across the table to take her hand, noting that she didn't flinch away from his touch anymore. And I know exactly how to fight someone who uses their reputation as a weapon. He was already making plans, already thinking about private investigators and media contacts, and all the ways that someone's carefully constructed public image could be dismantled by the truth. But I need to know that you're committed to fighting this time instead of running. The conversation that followed was long and difficult, as Maya wrestled with the idea that she might not have to spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, that there might be another way forward besides constant flight. Harrison explained his resources, his connections, his willingness to use everything he had built to protect her and destroy the man who had hurt her. It won't be easy, he warned, and it won't be quick. But if you're willing to fight, I'm willing to fight with you. Maya's decision to stay and fight marked the beginning of the most intense period of their relationship, as Harrison's team of private investigators began building a case against Dr. Richard Brennan, while Maya worked with therapists and lawyers to document the abuse she had suffered. It was painful work, forcing Maya to relive trauma she had been trying to forget. but it was also empowering in ways she hadn't expected. "I'm not running anymore," she told Harrison one evening after a particularly difficult deposition. "For the first time in years, I'm not running." The investigation revealed that Maya wasn't Dr. Brennan's only victim. Over the course of their 20-year marriage, he had systematically isolated and controlled her. But he had also engaged in similar patterns with female patients, using his position and expertise to manipulate vulnerable women. The pattern was clear once they started looking for it, and Maya's testimony became the keystone that brought down an entire edifice of professional abuse and personal cruelty. When the story broke, it made national news. Dr. Richard Brennan, the respected psychiatrist and author of 3 books on treating trauma, was revealed to be a predator who had spent decades using his knowledge of human psychology to inflict the very trauma he claimed to heal. Maya's brave decision to speak publicly about her experiences inspired other women to come forward, and the case became a landmark in discussions about psychological abuse and coercive control. The trial was difficult, but Maya faced it with a strength that amazed everyone who knew her. She testified clearly and powerfully about her experiences, and when Dr. Brennan was finally convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison, Maya wept not from sadness, but from relief. "It's over," she told Harrison afterward. "It's finally over." But even as she celebrated her victory, Harrison could see that she was struggling with what came next, with how to build a life when you were no longer defined by running from your past. The answer came from an unexpected source. Lily, now 9 years old and wise beyond her years, announced over dinner one evening that she thought Maya should write a book. "About what happened to you," Lily explained with matter-of-fact certainty. "So other people who are scared like you were will know they can get help." It was such a simple suggestion, but it crystallized something that had been building in Maya's mind since the trial ended. Maya's book, The Garden of Second Chances, became a bestseller and established her as a prominent voice in conversations about domestic abuse and psychological trauma. She used her platform to advocate for other survivors, to push for legislative changes, and to create support networks for women trying to escape dangerous relationships. The scared, broken woman who had appeared in Harrison's driveway had become someone who helped other scared, broken women find their own strength. But perhaps the most important change in Maya's life was the quietest one. 3 years after Dr. Brennan's conviction, on a spring morning when the roses in her garden were in full bloom, Maya and Harrison were married in a simple ceremony attended by family and close friends. Lily, now 12, served as maid of honor and proclaimed it the best wedding ever, because nobody cried except for happy reasons. Their marriage was built on a foundation of mutual respect and shared experience. 2 people who had learned that love didn't have to be complicated or painful, that it could be as simple as choosing to build a life together based on kindness and trust. They had faced the worst that life could throw at them and come through it stronger, and Maya finally understood what her grandmother had meant about roses. Sometimes the most beautiful things grew in the darkest soil, if someone was willing to believe they were worth the trouble of nurturing. On quiet evenings, when Lily was doing homework, and Maya was tending her garden while Harrison graded papers from the business courses he had started teaching, Maya sometimes thought about the woman she used to be. Rebecca had been lost and afraid, trapped in a life that was slowly killing her spirit. Maya had been born from Rebecca's ashes, forged in fire and fear, but tempered by love and hope. And now, finally, she was simply herself, whole and healed and home. The garden Maya had restored in those first desperate weeks had become something magnificent, a testament to the power of patient care and unwavering faith. Visitors often commented on how beautiful it was, how peaceful, how it seemed to radiate a sense of safety and growth. "It's because she talks to the plants," Lily would explain with the wisdom of someone who had grown up watching miracles bloom from careful tending. "She tells them they're beautiful and worth growing, and they believe her." And maybe that was the real secret, Maya thought as she knelt among her roses on yet another spring morning, her hands dirty with the good soil of a life well lived. Maybe growing anything worthwhile, plants or people or hope itself, came down to the simple act of believing it was possible, of speaking life into the places where only death had been before. Maybe healing was just another word for the daily choice to water what you wanted to see grow, to pull the weeds that threatened to choke out new life, to have faith that tomorrow would bring fresh blooms if you just kept tending the garden of your heart. Harrison found her there as the sun was setting, her face peaceful in the golden light that filtered through the leaves of the oak tree they had planted together on their first anniversary. "Happy?" he asked, settling beside her on the garden bench they had built from reclaimed wood and countless shared dreams. Maya looked at him, at their home, at the garden that had become a symbol of everything they had built together from the wreckage of their separate pasts. "Happy," she confirmed, and meant it with every fiber of her being. In the distance, they could hear Lily practicing piano, the notes floating through the evening air like promises of all the beautiful music yet to be made. Maya closed her eyes and listened, remembering a time when she had been too afraid to believe in tomorrow, too broken to imagine that she deserved kindness, too lost to find her way home. But here she was, surrounded by the evidence of her own resilience, proof that sometimes the most unlikely seeds could grow into the most extraordinary gardens if they were planted in soil rich with love and watered with hope, and tended by hands that refused to give up on the possibility of beauty blooming in the darkest places. The story that had begun with a terrified woman begging not to be hurt had become something else entirely, a testament to the transformative power of genuine kindness, the healing potential of chosen family, and the radical act of believing that everyone deserves a second chance at happiness. Maya had found her way from the darkness of fear to the light of love, and in doing so, she had shown others that the journey was possible, that broken things could be made whole, that winter always eventually gave way to spring in the garden of the human heart.